Hi there, I'm Paul with Aardvark Record Mastering. This is my little setup here, and we're going to be dealing with the multi-groove record, sometimes called a roulette record or a horse race record. So let's put this one on and see what we hear. Well, let's start it over. Well, that's different. Let's try another. Completely different. Yet another one that's completely different. So, how is this done? Well, we're going to cut one today. Let's remove the sled from the lathe. Here are the feed screws that guide the sled and the cutting head across the record. As you can see, the rear feed screw feeds the cutter head from edge to label. The closer one is for when we make inside-out cuts. When I engage this knob, the clutch engages, making the feed screws move faster for making lead-in grooves. This clutch stays engaged when making the roulette records. Time to put things back together. Now to discuss the cutter head. This is the Westrex head from the bottom view. Here's the advanced ball that regulates the groove depth, and here's the cutting stylus. You can see here the advanced ball riding behind the cutting stylus while cutting the groove. When the depth control unit sends DC voltage to the cutter head, the cutting coils push the stylus deeper into the blank lacquer. For purposes of cutting a roulette record, I've reversed the wiring, making the depth control pull the stylus upward instead of downward. Since the advanced ball regulates the depth of cut, this causes the stylus to live just above the record surface, therefore not making a groove or a very shallow one. The depth control unit is controlled by 2 microswitches on the back of the lathe. I manually activate the depth control unit, and when the lathe reaches the 12-inch start point, this microswitch activates to shut off the depth control. The depth control is deactivated, allowing the stylus to cut into the blank. Once the sled has traveled to the 12-inch end point, another microswitch activates and the depth control unit is deactivated, pulling the stylus upward, no longer cutting into the blank, thus ending the cut. The first thing I need to do is make sure that each groove is spaced equally from the other grooves. In this record there are 10 grooves to be cut. I have a compass with markings from 0 to 359 degrees. The first groove is cut starting at the 0 degree mark. For each groove, the turntable will be advanced 36 degrees. The feed screw will be locked in at the same fixed point for each cut. Here I am ready to cut groove number 6, which will be at the 180-degree mark. The indicator for the sled position is at a specific mark, and the feed screw is positioned at an exact rotation. The lead-in clutch is engaged. It stays engaged throughout the cut. Here we are cutting the first groove. Now, while cutting the second groove, we can see the first groove then followed by the second groove. There you can see 2 grooves. There's the one groove followed by the second groove. Now there's the fourth groove. You can see there's 3 grooves, 3 grooves, 3 grooves, and now 4 grooves. Here we're cutting the 8th groove, so we only have enough room to fit 2 more grooves into the gap. Now the 10th groove fills it in finely. You can see there it is, the 10th groove has filled in the gap. Here we are cutting Wild Ranny, the last cut on the A side. Here we are cutting the first groove on the B side of a roulette record. So I'll show more details as we cut. Now the second groove of the B side. It can be tricky holding the camera to the microscope. Okay, I've cut a few of these roulette records, and they were originally called horse race records. So this one here is a race game. It has 5 tracks on it. This one I did not cut. This was made back sometime in the 1950s. And what you would do is, since it was multi-groove, whenever you dropped the stylus, you'd get a chance of one of 5 different grooves. And you were able to bet on it accordingly. So they originally had these in 78 RPM. I didn't bother trying to get one of those. This is one of my favorite roulette records. This is by the Octopus Project, and it is a double LP. And it has on the final D side record, the D side is a roulette record with 12 different tracks. And on top of that, they include a zoetrope that you can make yourself. So if you can find this, it would be a very fun record to get. I believe I cut it back in about 2012. This is one of my most recent ones. This was by Tusco Embassy. It has 12 tracks on it. And it has no label, or a blank black label. The one that I just showed you being cut is a 10 groove, and that was also by Tusco Embassy. And I think the next one we're going to do, we're going to try and lengthen the sides. Instead of like 2 minutes, try to get it up to about 2 minutes 50 seconds. And that will be a little bit more difficult to cut, and so I'm not sure if we'll have 10 grooves or 12 grooves, or have to settle for like about 8. Okay, another example of roulette records are the Mattel CNC. It actually has a record inside of it, and so when you pull it, depending on where you aim it, is where you're going to get the is where you're going to hear what is said. Now, one of the fun things you can do with this, if you do it right, you can cause it to skip. So the sheep went bark, bark, bark because I skipped the record. Now, the later ones of these, they use a digital chip, and so they're not going to skip. Now, there's a guy on YouTube who has taken one of these apart and actually shows the record. I'm going to leave a link in the description below so you can look at how this little toy can be taken apart, and a little record in there that runs at 78 RPM. So, I hope you've enjoyed the whole thing about cutting multi-groove records. Take care.